Listen, for you guys that this is your first Sunday, what we've been doing here, we're going through the whole Bible, starting at the Genesis, and we're going to go all the way through to the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation. And we're in the book of Daniel now, and Daniel is a prophet. Daniel is a mouthpiece for God. But it was really interesting, not to a Jewish king of Israel or Judah, not to a godly king, but to an ungodly, a heathen king. Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and Darius. And Daniel and his buddies, who were taken captive by the Babylonians, King Nebuchadnezzar, they said, listen, we're taking you captive. And then they were good-looking guys. They were smart. And they said, we're going to make you part of our political system. And so even though Israel is captive in Babylon for many years, 70, at this time, they're still, they're slaves, but they're being treated sometimes good and sometimes very bad. So that's, and Daniel is a prophet. And that's where we're at. We're in the book of Daniel. And Daniel chapter 6, if you guys have a Bible, Daniel chapter 6. If you don't, make a note and go buy one this week. If you can't afford one, one will be provided for you. I mean, we got a bunch of them, you know. Listen, I can't remember that guy in text that he says, like, this is your Bible, it's your friend. Who's that guy? He's got a monster church. I'm going to start doing it, see if it helps us grow it all. Joel Osteen, yeah, this is your Bible. Anyways, I'm going to try to do that. This is your Bible. How many of you guys brought a Bible? Raise it up. All right, you guys are dismissed early. Look at the guy's he's whipped out his cell phone. Oh, I got one here. I don't know where it's at. I got an app somewhere. There is an app for that. Daniel chapter 6, verse 1 says, Darius, for you guys that, Nancy isn't even going to put it up there. Good job, Nance. I'm with you on that. I don't care. They can't find it. That's their fault. No, I got these cool pens. I'm going to buy you all a pen. It's got like a little scroll that comes out. It's by Awanas, and it's got the New Testament and the Old Testament on it. And it's cool because, listen, I know a lot of you guys never went to church. A lot of you guys, I go, Daniel, where's that? Is that in the Bible somewhere? Yes, it is. And if you go to, he's sleeping. No, don't bother him, man. Jeez Louise, the guy's out like a light. If you go to Dale's Sunday school class, he brought you like cheat things for your Bible, little things that you can, and they're good. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So, it's an ADD moment. I have no idea where I was. I know I'm in Daniel 6, but I had a reason to do that, but I don't know what it is. So are we up there? Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed high officers to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and two others as administrators to supervise the high officers, and protectors and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. It's Daniel. Now, Daniel's been captive, I want to say, he was a teenager when they took him. I want to say it's 30 to 40 more years. So I think of Daniel's around 44, 55, somewhere in there. That's how I think Daniel's age is. But when you guys have been with him and studied this young man, Daniel, and now in his midlife, you'll find that his character has never changed. He's always been steadfast in his faith and his love for the one true living God. He's never swayed one way or the other. And he's just been steady, a steady Eddie when it comes to his faith and belief in God. Now, we know that God said, listen, Daniel, here's the deal. I have chose you to represent me, and you are going to, be my mouthpiece. And Daniel was spectacular at it. And even as he gets older, because I know most of you guys realize this. Most of the time when guys fall, what if I stumble? What if I fall? What if I make a fool of us all? When men screw up in relationships, in marriages, it's usually in their 40s and 50s when they feel like, something else should have happened, and then they chase some young person, and then they think they're a man again. And usually, and this is statistics, that's when it happens. Even King David, in his moment of success in life, he's a king, and his kingdom, everything's going good. Next thing he knows, he sees this beautiful naked woman. He says, well, I want that now. And he falls. Okay, so the truth of the matter is, most of the time, when men fall, it's in that period of their life. Daniel is he's going strong. His love for the Lord, his dedication to what God has called him to, is going good. Now, I say this because you guys know that I just teach the Bible. And there's so many crazy things that go on in our lives. We deal with family problems. We deal with the sons and daughters that maybe heading this way or heading that way. You deal with your kids at school. You deal with in your relationships that things aren't working out. You deal with addictive behaviors, financial issues, social issues, sporting issues. There's a boatload of things that we deal with. And as your hired holy man, I try not to go, okay, we're going to talk about the NFL today. Oh, we're going to talk about politics today. We're going to talk about how to be a better dad today. We're going to talk about people that are addicted to pornography. No, we're going to talk about people who are addicted to drugs. No, we're talking about people addicted to alcohol. No, we're going to talk about people who are addicted to T-bone steaks. We're just talking about addictions. No, and so there's all these little topics, and I want you guys to understand this. The reason I decided to go all from Genesis, because the good Lord covers it all. And honestly, I find when you study the Word of God, the Spirit of God says, you got to get all these other things right in your life, and I'll help you do it. Whether it's a personal issue, a family issue, a political issue, a social issue. This is it. He gives us the answers right here, because we look at Daniel, and then the next thing you know, we look at jealousy. Let's read verses 4-5. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy, so they concluded our only chance to finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in a connection with his rules of his religion. Jealousy. Now we're going to deal with jealousy, because why? Everybody else that is parallel with him on the chart of, who's who in the kingdom is jealous. You guys read this. Let's read about, what you would say to your kids. Listen, kids, always be faithful, always be responsible, always be completely trustworthy. Wouldn't you tell your kids to do that? Wouldn't you tell anybody to do that? Listen, be trustworthy, be responsible, and be faithful. Are those good traits, yes or no? Yes. Are those good traits, yes or no? Come on, let's get into it. Are those good traits, yes or no? And then look what he got. He got thrown into the lion's den. So if you were your son or daughter, you say, no way, man, no. Listen, Daniel, he was faithful, trustworthy, completed all his tasks, and what happened then? They threw him in the lion's den. Worse, but you are sharper than your sons and daughters, and you would say, yes, but look what happened. God shut the lion's mouth, and they threw those snakes in there with them, with their children, their wives, and concubines, and then the lions killed them and ate them all. So who wins in the end? Daniel. Why? Because he was responsible, trustworthy, and faithful. Good characteristics that I know all you guys, when you leave here today, you're going to say, I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to be trustworthy, and whatever else. Responsible. Oh yeah, because okay, that an ADD guy could go off on responsibility. Anyways, so here we go. Where does jealousy get you? Anybody? Nowhere, yeah. You know, one of my favorite shows is this guy. His name is Joe Kenda, and he's a retired police officer from Colorado Springs. And it's all his old investigations. And right before they put this crime together, right before he catches the perpetrator of a homicide, he does this thing. He goes, "Oh my, my, my." And it's just so funny. I just pick up on little things because I have nothing else to do at 10 o'clock at night. He just says, "Oh my, my, my." And now I'm going to put him in jail. Oh my, my, my. And for you guys that grew up in the 70s, that was kind of like your parents or grandparents would say that stuff. Oh my, my, my. And it's just, for me, it just rang this sweet little bell. I said, oh my, my, my. Are you in trouble now? Oh my, my, my. And so, and we know what jealousy does. Listen, you guys, if you have a pen, write these verses down. You can look up jealousy later. The Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 6. The book of James, chapter 3, verses 14 through 16. The book of Psalms, 37, verses 1 through 3. And the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 30. So, Song of Songs, 8:6, James 3, 14 through 16, Psalms 37, 1 through 3, and Proverbs 14 through 30. If you get some time later today, look up those verses. And I'm just going to mention the one of Song of Solomon. Because the one in Song of Solomon basically talks about jealousy in a relationship. What it will do, it will lead you to kill. Jealousy will lead you down the path that is of total destruction. Oh my, my, my. And what happens with these administrators? Well, here we go. Verse 6 of Daniel chapter 6, verse 6. So the administrator and the high officers went to all the kings and said, "Long live King Darius." This is what you call sucking up. Okay. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persia that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. Let's keep going, verse 10. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with his windows open toward Jerusalem, and he prayed 3 times a day, just as he has always done, giving thanks to his God. Then the officials went to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about this law. Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions? Yes, the king replied, that decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. Then they told the king, "No, Daniel, one of the captives from Judah is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day." Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, "Your majesty, you know, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed." So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, "May your God, whom you serve so faithful, rescue you." For you guys that have been with me since the book of Genesis, when we hit the book of Esther, we learned something about the Medes and the Persians. Because there's 3 characters, Mordecai, Haman, and Queen Esther. Queen Esther, I'll just say this, she's hot. She was the finest looking woman in all the world. Got it? Queen Esther was drop dead gorgeous. Her uncle, what was her uncle's name? Started with an M, yeah, Mordecai. That's her uncle. And he goes, listen, you're beautiful. We're going to get you to know the king, and you're going to save us. And then there was Haman, who hated him. Haman does this. He says he gets the king to sign and say, we're going to wipe out the Jews. Well, they hear about this. And so he doesn't know what to do because it's the law of the Medes and the Persians. So Mordecai and Esther come to the king and tell him what's going on. And the king says, well, here's the deal. I'm going to make another law. And that is that all the Jews can defend themselves, and they can kill anybody. Men, women, children, goats, puppies, kitties, anything who tries to attack them. And they can keep whatever they had. So this law that they had, that the Medes and Persians has, it's law. There's no loophole for this law. Once the king took his signet ring, burnt a candle, put some wax on it, stomped it on the law, embedded his mark on it, the New Testament says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. No gray areas. There is absolutely no gray areas. It's yes or no. And you think about when you raise your kids or raised your kids, how many gray areas do you have? I was talking to Pastor Josh. He subs every now and then. And he had this student that acted up. And the teacher where he was subbing had this thing. He says, I give him 6 chances. Man, how much more gray can you get? And he told this kid, he said, I don't give 6 chances. It's yes or no. You either straighten up or you go to office. Yay or nay. Isn't that good to understand for anybody when you're dealing with boundaries in life? It's either yay or nay. And what's really interesting about this fact, especially in the chains, this of Darius, King Darius, and this guy that he really likes, Daniel. And Daniel is older person. He's not a kid. He's like, man, I signed this in the law. And I bet he says this. He goes, Daniel, you know the law. You've lived here long enough. You know that when I made this law, this edict, that was it. There's no loopholes. I can't get out of it. I can't get you out of it. Because Daniel had to knew he's sharp. He said, I'm going to pray whether you like it or not. And he said, I am willingly going to break the law, knowing the consequence of breaking the law. But this is very few places in the Bible where he says God's law is more important than man's law. And he goes, I'm going to pray. Not only am I going to pray, I'm going to go up to the balcony. I'm going to slide open all my doors. And so everybody can see that I am still going to pray to the one true living God. And, of course, hey, let's face it, the other governors, the other people parallel to him, they are jealous. They hate him. And they have just been waiting. They have just been waiting for a time when they can do this. And they go to the king, hey, king, Daniel's praying. Daniel's praying. Not to you, to his God. You wrote it. You said the law. This is what's going to happen. Verse 19, very early the next morning, the king, verse 17. We ended verse 15, so verse 16. So at last the king gave the order for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, may your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. And then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out of the lion's den. Hurried down to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, Was your God whom you serve so faithful, able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel answered, long live the king. My God sent his angels to shut the lion's mouth so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged your majesty. Is that amazing? You know, when I was a kid and they did this on a flannel graph, I think Daniel wasn't old. I think he was a young guy, you know, kind of like our kid's age. And we just thought it was cool that he didn't get eaten by lions. I mean, that's cool, right? I grew up outside Chicago. We used to go down to Brookfield Zoo, and we used to see the lions. They'd throw a steak into them, and a little kid, and they'd eat them. Okay, no little kids, but I just want to see if you're still with me. Anyways, and they're huge. It was just so cool. And so, you know, for anybody that went to a zoo growing up and went to Sunday school, you knew what a lion's den was. They had a picture of it, you know, and you think, oh, my goodness. And, you know, the picture in my mind was like when I went to Barnum and Bailey Circus, you'd thrown in a cage, and then all the lions are sitting on their stools waiting to eat you. That's the picture in my mind. You know, and then they close the door, and then they rip you from limb to limb. And that's what I think of. And so here it is, happening. And it doesn't happen. And you can't see in. There's no, you know, and here's the king. He's like, man, this is my buddy. This guy does a great job. And but what they didn't tell you is, you know, the faith. And I named the title of my talk today, Security, because Daniel was so secure in his faith, in his love for God, in his relationship with God, that death, where is your sting? I think of the young lady in Columbine. When the gun was placed to her head, and was asked if she believed. She said, yes, I do. And then the trigger was pulled, and she was no more here, but she is there. That's a lot of faith. And that was so used and overused so many times. But the reality is, oh my goodness, your faith, your love, your confidence in God. And it's funny when I counsel, what I find the problem with most of us is our insecurity. How we look, where we live, what we drive, how much money we have, we don't have. And the Bible, from the Genesis, from the very beginning to the very end, says, please put your confidence in me, and I'll take care of you. I got you. That's what God says throughout the whole Bible. I got you. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. I know I've shared Romans 8:31 with you guys many times, but if God is for you, who can be against you? No one. And you will see the heavy hitters of faith in the Bible basically saying, God is for me, who can be against me? No one, and I don't care. And you got to have that I don't care what other people think attitude. When the edict was decreed and said, you cannot pray to anybody else, Daniel said, I don't care. I love God. I'm going to pray to God. And the king goes, Daniel, doggone, what are you, nuts? I can't believe you did that. You know what the law is. You know the law of the Medes of Persia. You know what happened in the time of Esther. You know what has always happened. And once that law is signed, bam, it's done. And even though the king's heart was breaking and he couldn't do anything about it, he throws him into the lion's den, and he comes and he's like, Daniel, are you there? And Daniel goes, long live the king. I mean, the guy still has respect for the king that threw him into the... because he was secure. He was so secure in his faith in God. Sometimes I think you and I, as it says in the book of James, we go through trials, firestorms. And I think it says these are tests, these are rainstorms, thunderstorms, hurricanes, to test your faith so that you come out stronger, shinier, healthier. Because you don't ever look for God to work when life is good. When life is good, you think it's all you. But when life gets tough, usually that's when you go, oh, I better look to God. Not that he wasn't there in the good times. He's always there. So I think the question we need to ask is our security really in God? Do you practice faithfulness to God? Is everything yours his? Do you allow him to be God of everything in your life? Your relationship, your sons, your daughters, your resources, everything. I just gave you a little snippet of what happened to the people whose security was not in God. Maybe it's a snippet of what's to come, whose people who choose not to have the security in God. The snippet is that all these people, leaders, high rollers, who basically said, who let jealousy get the best of them, the king said, all right, probably had a long list of names. And he said, not only has this infected you personally, but this infection is probably in your whole family. So bring your whole family, your kids, your pets. And he throws them to their doom. That's what the king does. So really, when we saw earlier, what made these other leaders jealous was Daniel's responsibility, his faithfulness, his courage, his ability to be trustworthy. Paid off hugely in the end. Amen? So I think my challenge is, where does your security lie? My prayer is that it lies in your relationship with God. Nothing else. With God. When crazy things happen, and I've had crazy things happen in my life, and I know as well as you have had crazy things happen in your life. When crazy things happen, know this. God knows it. And he expects you to be responsible, faithful, and trustworthy. That's what he expects. And hopefully your security, because you study the word, you know the word, is so good that you go, let it rain, baby, let it rain.